a different world.
Hey guys, today we're playing Sonic Superstars. As you can see, I'm at the first level and this game fucking sucks! If you've been on YouTube for any amount of time, you're almost definitely aware of Let's Plays, and if you're not, 1, you must be living under Mount Everest, and 2, they're videos of people playing video games, usually with their own commentary sprinkled in. Many other forms of gaming content can be traced back to this formula, and many successful careers have been kickstarted because of it. My parents always thought Let's Plays were a massive waste of time. Why watch someone else play the game when you can play it yourself? And to that I said, well, sports were the same thing. My mom watches crime dramas and my dad watches America's Funniest Home Videos. It's not like it mattered much anyways, because I've never really been an avid viewer of Let's Plays to begin with. I was a fan of a few when I was younger, like Dan TDM and Blitzwinger, and I even tried making ones myself with some embarrassing, long-since privated videos on this very channel. But despite this, Let's Plays were never really something I actively sought out for. Most of what I watched on YouTube was TV show clips and flash animations, for better or for worse. But when I started watching YouTube more, my usage of TV declined. Who needs quality programming when you could watch SpongeBob YTPs and Flipnote compilations? And it's clear that I wasn't the only one who thought this way, as cable viewership declined in part of the increased accessibility of the internet. YouTube's dominance over children's entertainment posed a real threat to traditional media. Kids weren't watching nearly as much TV as they used to, so in a desperate attempt to win back viewership, media companies tried appealing harder to internet kids with varying results. Some of these attempts involved making shows for gamers, and quite a few were made. At one point, they even just straight up aired some actual YouTube Let's Plays on TV. Some of the gamer shows that I can name off the top of my head include Nickelodeon's Game Shakers, Disney XD's The Gamer's Guide to Pretty Much Everything, and the subject of today's video, Gaming Show in My Parents' Garage. Unlike the other two, Gaming Show was actually made in my home country of Canada, with Disney XD holding the rights to air the show in the US. There's surprisingly very little on the development of this show, but from what I can gather, it originally aired as a single pilot in April 2014, with a full series premiering in November that same year. Oh god, this show is 10 years old. Toronto-based production company Banger Films was producing the show, and it was created by Jesse Shimada, not to be confused with one of the hosts who shares the same first name. It ran for 35 episodes across 2 seasons between the years of 2014 and 2016, originally airing on Family Charged, the Canadian We Have Disney XD at Home channel. Currently, it seems like the rights are being held by WildBrain, who also own the rights to enough children's properties to make even the mouse jealous. What if they're called Freaky Brain and they held the rights to a lot of porn? Pretty much all of its episodes are available on the official YouTube channel, along with a bunch of extras such as behind-the-scenes content, re-uploads of segments from the show, and YouTube-exclusive Let's Plays. Ironic. In other gamer shows, the content and scenarios are entirely fictional, with the extent of the gamer appeal being purely on aesthetics and references. Gaming Show is unique in that it's essentially a hybrid variety show slash sitcom that aims to put you in the know of all things gaming. Each episode ties together a bunch of segments using a central topic and plot. The show consists of 3 hosts, Jesse, Julia, and Ian, who all have distinct personalities. Ian is the sports one, Julia is the girl, and Jesse can teleport. Well, they were a third of the way there. The central premise of the show follows the 3 hosts managing their YouTube channel, which you can actually visit. It's really neat seeing this show push mixed mediums such as the internet as a way to market itself, especially since it was still seen as a relatively new thing back then. I remember really liking this show as a kid, though I was 11 at the time, so take that with a grain of salt. It'll be interesting to see how this show holds up though, if at all. So, without further ado, this is the Gaming Show in My Parents' Garage Retrospective, starting with the first season.
It's Ali from Nintendo.
Kicking off with the pilot, we are greeted to Think Noodles! Yeah, expect celebrity features to be an extremely common thing in this show. I'll talk about it with more depth in a bit. In the pilot, we're introduced to the 3 hosts, Jesse, Julia, and Ian, 3 teenagers who have started a group YouTube channel. They're like the Game Grumps, but for kids. Honestly, basing the show around their YouTube channel is a clever way to balance the variety show and sitcom aspects. Plots can follow the antics of managing their YouTube channel while also providing an in-universe explanation for the variety of clips. What they put on display hits all the right notes for the kinds of games that kids in 2014 would like to see. You have your Minecraft, sports games, licensed games, Nintendo, a decent selection overall. The presentation is both the best and worst part of this show. On one hand, the gamer aesthetic that it tries to pull is about as awkward as most other attempts to appeal to that crowd. They don't get it quite right, so it comes off like one of those eat, sleep, game shirts you'd find at Walmart or the So Retro meme from last year. The music especially falls into this problem. Most of it's either fucked up chiptune or Teemo-ass dubstep, though some of the melodies and progressions are okay, I guess. On the other hand, when it's trying to lean more into the beginner YouTuber angle, or intentional amateurism if you will, it can come off as kind of charming. You have little transitions done in stop motion with toys or the host messing around with a green screen, and they're kind of fun to watch. The actual Let's Plays on this show don't feel too forced either, with the setup and quality feeling akin to something you'd actually see on YouTube. The set is genuinely well designed too, I'd love to hang out here, it seems so cozy. One thing I found surprising was the quality of the writing on display. It isn't the funniest show ever, but some of the jokes did make me chuckle a little, and the plot progression is surprisingly solid despite the weird format.
Hey, I'm Julia. I'm into music, fashion, and virtual reality badminton.
It feels like it accomplishes exactly what it wants to do without feeling over or underwhelming. It doesn't really break too many boundaries, and it's pretty clearly written for kids, but at the very least, it's a decently engaging show if you're a 19-year-old watching it for the sake of reviewing it on your YouTube channel. Overall, the pilot is a pretty solid introduction to the show's format and premise. Sure, it's nothing really all that special, but that doesn't necessarily make it bad. It knows what it wants to do, and it does it decently well. The rest of the season is pretty much the same quality-wise. However, when it comes to the sitcom and variety show aspects, there's a lot to be said. When talking about the sitcom aspects, most of the episodes have interesting and even downright wild plots on paper. Some of my favorites include, every console in the garage breaks at the same time because of a goddamn bobcat, so the three start playing retro games for the channel while they wait for them to get fixed. Through this episode, I learned that scuba divers shit themselves if they resurface too fast because they use it as an analogy for their reverse retro montage at the end when they get their consoles back. The gang participates in a 24-hour gaming challenge. I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be the Extra Life charity challenge too, but they barely show them gaming in the episode, so great work, guys. Also, Jesse becomes British for like 5 minutes. Disgusting. The trio deal with bullying from a troll that just so happens to be Toronto Blue Jays player Marcus Stroman extracting revenge after Jesse pissed him off. Still better than the scene from Ralph Breaks the Internet. I like that the segments they use in each episode fit its plot too, however the execution of these plots varies greatly. For example, there's The Intern, where the trio hires Toronto Raptors player Jonas Valanciunas to be their intern. The problem is, he's a total dumbass, and he's tall! I don't even know what's worse. I think the plot is very well executed here, even being integrated into some of the variety show segments. You can even see him fuck up Think Noodles base in Minecraft. It rounds out quite well, and the plot feels like it progressed fine enough without it feeling like it's missing too much. But you also have My Uncle's Car, which is an episode I really wanted to like, but its execution was a bit underwhelming. It follows our main cast figuring out how to keep the channel running while Jesse's uncle's car stays in the garage following a flood. While the focus of the episode remains consistent, being about racing games, I feel like the plot itself could have used more conflict or at least 1 or 2 more scenes showing the crew struggling to keep the show afloat with their super gaming garage being overtaken by a wagon. They named the car Wagony, by the way. I mean, it's still a better name than Gaming Show in My Parents' Garage, I'll give them that much. Finally, you have Code Yellow, which has literally no major plot whatsoever and is just another 22 minutes of the 3 hosts dicking around. This is one of 2 episodes that do this, by the way. By itself, that wouldn't be a big issue. It would only really mean that they're focusing more on the variety show aspects rather than the sitcom ones, which isn't necessarily better or worse. My problem is that it's inconsistent. It feels like the writers are having a hard time figuring out how to balance the 2 halves of this show, which can lead to one or the other feeling undercooked. As for the variety show aspect, I feel like it's mostly done well. You have segments such as Let's Plays obviously, top 5 lists, reviews of games, and interviews with a large variety of guests such as gaming industry figures, popular YouTubers, Canadian sports stars for some reason, and even some mainstream celebrities. Standout guests include Charles Martinet, the now former voice of Mario, which still feels wrong to say, Dan TDM, Captain Sparkles, Smooth McGroove, and of course, the man, the myth, the legend, Adam Sandler. He even brought his friends Paul Blart Malt Cop and the other 2 I don't care about. There are even segments hosted by other people, such as animations by Risen Visual, Mind Time, a Minecraft roundup hosted by a kid named Finn, and YouTube tips with Think Noodles. Speaking of Minecraft, I noticed that it's very heavily featured in the show, more than any other game in fact. Most of the YouTuber cameos are from Minecraft channels, some of the animations are Minecraft related, and there are entire segments just for Minecraft. It makes sense considering this show was being released during the height of Minecraft's popularity, but at the same time, this is the most insane amount of glazing I've seen towards a game. The only thing coming close is Xbox fans insisting Starfield is anything above mid. You can tell this show was made in 2014, by the way, but not in the way you might think. You might think that I'm referring to outdated gamer jokes making it hard to watch, but there's way less of that than I expected. A lot of the comedy comes from the character interactions, and the characters work off each other in a way that makes them really feel like they're three best friends running a YouTube channel in their parents' garage. All three hosts are unique enough to where they don't entirely feel like exact clones of each other, but they still have a shared interest and work as a team, and most importantly, they actually feel like kids. Shocking, I know. I also find it unintentionally funny when they try to gas up some shitty-ass games, like, yeah guys, Sonic Boom and Pac-Man and the Ghostly Adventures are the peak of the franchise, it can't get better than this. If that's the best these franchises have to offer, then I'm deathly afraid of what their worst is. That being said, the writing, format, and use of real games really helps gaming show stand out amongst its competition. It's rather cheesy sometimes, but it feels a lot more authentic, like the directors and writers actually researched the gaming industry and tried to do what kids actually wanted instead of spamming MLG jokes half a decade after everyone stopped giving a shit. Then if it's not the humor, how can it tell this show was made in 2014? Dude, look at it! They're unironically using a Wii U! Honestly, the show being a relic of 2014 kinda gives it a new appeal as a time capsule of sorts. Seeing where the gaming industry was at that point in time makes watching the show over 10 years later kind of intriguing. This was during a time when commercial VR headsets weren't really a thing yet, people were still sure that mobile games would be the future of gaming, and Mario Kart 8 was the latest game in the series. Well, some things never change. And it's not just the gaming industry, we can also peek at the YouTube landscape of the time too, with the kinds of segments and personalities that they chose to feature, down to the extremely optimistic way they portray being a creator. It all screams early 2010s. Overall, Season 1 is better than I expected, but it's still not really that good. This show clearly wasn't made to be binged. The format lends itself way more to something that's aired on TV weekly. I don't really see a show like this working today because cable is a rotting corpse that's been replaced by streaming and YouTube. Not to mention that the gaming industry nowadays moves faster than Sonic on fentanyl and sucks harder than Kirby giving head.
Isn't it funny though that no one's playing as Mario? Isn't that usually your thing?
Despite that, color me surprised. This show isn't nearly as bad as I thought it would be jumping back in, but it's still just kind of mediocre. I'm definitely interested to see how Season 2 pans out though. Let's take a look.
Look at high, drop it
At least he's not playing drop this brick on your foot.
I had a really hard time finishing this season. Not that it got worse, in fact it's better in most ways, but when you're watching 35 episodes of the exact same shit over and over, it will get absolutely grueling near the end. This season is what I'd call better by default. Its increased budget and persistence in what worked basically guarantee that this season will be better than the first, unless everyone on the production staff decided to do a little trolling. The larger budget is especially apparent in the production value. The music sees a bit more of a rock and roll flair this time around, along with being higher quality and having more variety, which is especially apparent with the theme song being less YouTuber intro and more TV show intro this time around. The visuals, editing, and direction also seem to be improved and more varied as well. Overall, there's a lot less of the gamer aesthetic, but there's also a lot less intentional amateurism too. It seems like this season wanted to go for a bit more of a generic Disney XD cool vibe that make it fit in with the channels it was airing on. I don't really have much of a problem with that, but maybe I'm desensitized to the horrors of early 2010s edginess. At the same time though, I can't help but feel like it's a downgrade, at least in terms of being unique. The format and writing have also seen changes. There's a larger variety of segments, being a lot more expansive and unique than the ones from the previous season, really putting the variety in variety show. New segments include Leaderboard and Who Wants to Be a Million Point Gamer, two game show segments based off Jeopardy and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire respectively. Both have a sort of arts and crafts aesthetic that I kind of like. The Gaming Genies, which is about gaming secrets. It's named after the Game Genie cheat device for the NES, which is a pretty cool deep cut, but it also advised the writing staff to check their windows for Nintendo's legal team. Gaming Tips with John Numbers, the winner of the 2015 Nintendo World Championships, which should be self-explanatory, it's just how to get good at Nintendo games with the pro. A few new Minecraft segments, Minelab Minute featuring Think Noodles, essentially a replacement for Mind Time but with my goat Think Noodles instead, and Jesse's Mind Time, which is only one segment and it's just him messing around in the game. Guess Think Noodles wasn't available that day. And various new animated segments, the most notable being The Legend of the Server Savers, an animated Minecraft miniseries featuring the three hosts. Quick side tangent, but Legend of the Server Savers is by far the worst thing that's come out of this show. Literally everything about it sucks. The writing makes no sense, the voice acting is so monotonous for everyone besides the main villain Dr. Ender, and the animation is stiffer than dried cardboard. I have no idea why they thought yet another Minecraft segment was needed, but I guess they still weren't done squeezing every last milk bucket from that cow. Sorry for the rant, I just needed to get that out of my system. Along with all the new stuff, they also continued with most of the segments from the first season too. They still have top 5 lists, reviews, let's plays, animations by Risen Visual, and of course, guest interviews. The guest list is much grander this time around, with more mainstream celebs making an appearance, along with the usual gaming industry figures and sports stars. There are almost no other YouTubers this time, oddly. I understand though, we're fucking weird. Standout guests include Weird Al, Tom Hanks, Deadmau5 for like 2 seconds, Shaquille O'Neal, Tony Hawk, Andrew WK, the host of Destroy Build Destroy, and Shigesato Itoi, the creator of the Mother series. They also shine a light on the competitive gaming scene, giving appearances to professional Smash players such as Wizrobe, the previously mentioned John Numbers, Nakat, and unfortunately Keitaro. I won't go into detail as it's a rather serious situation, but to put it vaguely, Keitaro was exposed as a terrible person a few years ago. What's interesting is that both he and Nakat appeared in the very last episode of the show, where the gang hosted a professional gaming tournament. Despite all the guest appearances in this show, it took until the very last episode to spot someone who was later outed for horrible things, and I hope this is the only time this happens. The sitcom plots feel a lot more focused and complete this time around. I can't really name a story that I wasn't satisfied with the overall progression of, and the plots themselves are a lot more diverse and interesting. Some of my favorites include, Ian tries to make a movie adaptation of Pong because he thinks he's the shit. He's a bossy director, so he faces conflict with the other crew members, namely Julia, Jesse, and Tom Hanks. The 3 deal with doppelgangers from the fictional country of Trugstanistan. Also, the doppelgangers respond to their call-out post with a YTP, which is hella based.
We're from gaming show my parents.
Toilet.
There's just straight up a Top Gun parody in there. I've never seen Top Gun, but this is what I imagine it's like. It's also just a fun idea for an episode. The gang discover a magical product that's totally not a scam called the Power Up 1000, claiming to power up your life, sold by none other than Weird Al. Because Jesse is Christian, Julia is Jewish, and Ian is capitalist, the trio decided to make an all-inclusive gaming holiday for the winter season. Its main figure is a fairy called Queen Let's Playsia. Never change, gaming show. Never change. I could give many more examples, but I feel like just a few should be enough to show the amount of variety on display. There are still some weak plots, like the one where Jesse turns to Toronto Raptors player DeMar DeRozan for advice, only to build an unhealthy reliance on him. But it feels less like some episodes in Season 1, where it was a problem of missed potential, and more that the story itself just kinda sucks. At least there's still a plot though, which is better than what some other parts of Season 1 can say. That being said, there is one major writing difference that I noticed with Season 2. It feels a lot more focused on the sitcom aspects rather than the variety show segments. The choice of plots, humor, and dialogue in this season are a lot more in line with how traditional sitcoms are written. Just without that god-awful laugh track. Hey, fun fact, everyone in that stupid laugh track recording is likely dead at this point. Not so funny now, huh? Anyways, Season 2 of Gaming Show feels like a variety show built around a sitcom, whereas with Season 1, it feels like the other way around. It seems like the staff have found their footing when writing for this show. They feel a lot more comfortable telling more complex stories, sometimes even overarching ones between episodes. They aren't afraid to show a little continuity and references to previous episodes. It's by no means a serialized show, but it's nice to see that they care a little more than they lead on. Okay, so if the season is better in almost every way, why did I have a hard time completing it? I already mentioned that it was because I felt the show was getting repetitive, but if the show saw improvements this massive, surely it wouldn't become too repetitive now, right? Am I stupid? Well, it's complicated. I feel like on a fundamental level, you can only push a format like the one used in gaming shows so far. No matter how much you could add to the show, it'd still feel like the same thing at its core. As I said earlier, this show is very clearly not meant to be binged, and as someone who chose to watch the whole thing for this video, I felt that harder than the dodgeball incident back at school. Is it my fault though? Kind of. On one hand, the 2.5 times larger episode count compared to Season 1 definitely played a factor in my fatigue with this series, but on the other hand, I feel like it highlights the sort of fundamental issue that comes with making a show like this, particularly while cable TV is on its way out. Also, for the record, that guy didn't hit me. From a business standpoint, it feels like this show only really exists to justify the continued investment into cable TV, justifying it to viewers by giving them similar content to what they'd find online, and to businesses by giving them a platform to advertise their products. While you could argue that we didn't fully know the fate of cable at the time, I feel like the writing was on the wall the moment you could watch Netflix on a goddamn 3DS. No matter how you look at it, this show was definitely at the right place. I mean, it's probably the most Disney XD type show ever conceived, but it was made at the wrong time. A show like this would have been really memorable if it was made in the 2000s, or even if it was an independent YouTube channel made a few years later. Hell, it'd fit right in with the likes of G4 or Scott the Woz, depending on which pill you took. And it'd stand out because it'd be geared towards kids. It feels like the staff were starting to realize this as well, so they decided to push Season 2 as way more of a traditional TV show than a cool, unique idea revolving around mixed mediums. But in my opinion, that doesn't really solve the fundamental problems I mentioned earlier. In fact, it makes it worse by making it stand out less. With all this in mind, it's not surprising that this show never got renewed for a third season. It wasn't even formally cancelled, just left to rot as everything related to it would just slowly cease activity or go offline. The website was taken offline at around 2021, the GarageCraft Minecraft server, of course that's a thing, went down at an unknown time, and the YouTube channel would stop posting new content around 2016 with upload ceasing entirely in 2020. To round off this retrospective, I think it'd be cool to take a quick look at this extra content surrounding the main show, especially since the use of mixed mediums was one of the major marketing draws to gaming show to begin with, so how about we take a peek?
What the fuck?
There isn't much to say about the extra content, so I'll keep it brief. The 2015 Nintendo World Championships must have given the team behind this show a lot of content to milk from, because not only do we have coverage of the event in this show itself, and an entire series of segments featuring the winner of that event, but they also held an entire 45-minute special that was just Jesse describing all the things that went on in the event. Aaron Hansen is there too. Wait, Aaron Hansen? No joke, when I saw him on screen talking to the camera, I literally screamed. I must have woken up literally everyone in my neighborhood. Besides that, though, there's not much to say about this special. There's nothing really interesting about it besides the fact that this is supposedly the very last piece of gaming show content that was ever put into production, barring maybe a few YouTube videos. You'd be better off watching the official Nintendo stream instead. Speaking of YouTube, let's talk about their YouTube channel. What do you want me to say? It's a fucking YouTube channel! I mean, besides re-uploads of segments from the show and just straight up the episodes themselves, there's a few exclusive segments, like behind the scenes, more let's plays, some random stuff like reviews and a Rube Goldberg machine for some reason, and Mario's House, some weird dorkly-esque Mario parody series with each of the hosts playing a different character. It's kind of boring, but it's still better than Legend of the Server Savers. In fact, I'd honestly prefer if this was on the show instead, not just because I hate Server Savers, but also because it's a lot less continuity heavy. That's all I can say, really. Oh, and the show got a Hungarian dub like 6 years after it ended, when literally everything about it was outdated. Didn't mention they had a Minecraft server yet, and a Flash game? You know, for a show that I previously praised for taking advantage of mixed mediums and the rise of the internet, this extra content seems wholly uninteresting. I guess I set myself up for disappointment right there because I really should have expected that. I'm out of stuff to say, let's just conclude the retrospective. As I said earlier, Gaming Show was never renewed for a third season, leaving it to fade away and eventually be forgotten about. I asked my followers on various different sites if they knew about the show's existence, and if they did, their experiences and opinions about it. Not many people responded, and most of the people that did were my fellow Canadian friends. Some remembered liking it while others really didn't, but overall, it seems to be a distant memory amongst all of us. When rediscovering this show, it felt like I was digging up a repressed memory, not just for myself, but for many Canadian kids who grew up in the 2010s. When doing research for this video, I was curious as to where most of the people involved with the show went after its demise, so I compiled a quick list of what I could find. Jesse surprisingly still has a public presence online, making pop music under the alias Jesse Sucks. It's pretty good actually, you should give his stuff a listen. Julia and Ian have seemingly gone back to living private lives, which is totally understandable. The show's creator, Jesse Shimada, just went back to doing business as usual. Finn, the kid that hosted Mind Time, currently does animation for the LEGO stop-motion channel Brickverse. Risen Visual went inactive around 2016 all the way up to around last month where they uploaded a Fallout animation. Think Noodle still does YouTube, but he makes pure brain rot content with the fucking Apple AR cat emoji for some reason. Dude, what the hell is this man doing? He's in his mid-40s.
Oh, goody.
Oh, what? Wait. Wait a minute. No,
How
wait, what's
strange. Why would he run?
wrong with her? Is he racist?
And John Numbers is still around doing Twitch streaming. He seems pretty excited about the Nintendo World Championship Switch game that got announced while I was working on this video, expressing a desire for the real event to return soon. I guess it's full circle from here. You know, looking back at this show and doing a whole retrospective about it was kind of bittersweet. Despite not watching it for very long, as I only tuned in around the middle of the second season, I feel like this show had a bit of an influence on me as I grew up. I remember around 4 years ago, I wanted to try making this very video, but I was only 15 and had no idea where to even begin after finishing the show. This isn't really a great show. I'd hesitate to even call it good. But as a kid, a teenager, and now an adult, there's just something about this show that makes me refuse to call it outright bad. It was ultimately an ad show, but I kind of view it in the same way that I do Guinness World Records Gamers Edition, which is fitting because I had a bunch of those growing up as well. I know they both just exist to sell an existing brand to gamer kids, but damn it, I was gamer kids. I like these things because they thought it was cool as hell, and I still think they're cool because my nostalgia is forcing me at gunpoint. Call me cringe all you want, I don't really care, but that's just how it is sometimes. We like some strange things as kids, and we still hold an attachment to it even as adults because it was there for an important part of our lives. It's normal and everyone has experienced it differently. Also, I drew myself as the Giga Chad in this picture, so you're automatically wrong. Gaming show in my parents' garage represents a transitional period. One where TV was on the way out and the internet was rapidly taking its place. Some companies wanted to prove that TV was still viable, so they made shows like these as a way to get internet kids to watch TV. Did it succeed? No, not really, but at the same time, what it left behind is still very fascinating, especially with about a decade's worth of retrospect to look at it with. Honestly, analyzing the show in the context it was created in, and watching it as a time capsule for what gaming, the internet, and TV was like back in 2014, is way more interesting than actually watching the show as intended, and for that reason, I'm glad the show exists. It's not really a good show, but it means something to me, and it represents an interesting time of transition and adaptation. So for what it set out to do as a show, I think it did just fine. Could have used a bit more Minecraft though.